How can a remote rural community sustainably sell its artisan craft to a global market? Is it possible to preserve and commercialize handcraft traditions? No artisanal tradition has escaped change over time, especially when we consider those with ancient histories. Artisanal craft traditions are born from the resources people have sustained access to, the activities they perform when using or celebrating them, and the continuation of these practices over time. There are countless factors that push craft traditions in one direction or another. The weaving of palm leaves into objects of many uses is a tradition in Santa Maria Ixcatlan that has survived hundreds of years. In the mountains of the Mixteca and the Cañada regions of Oaxaca, in southeast Mexico, palm trees have flourished and cover large expanses of land. The use of their leaves has been utilitarian and ceremonial, such as rugs for sleeping on, as woven sheets to fan a wood-burning kitchen stove, hats to protect against the sun, as the primary material used in thatched roofs, and then as a woven covering for the deceased as their souls enter the afterlife. When someone began bartering or offering money for any of these objects, they began to change, adapting to interests both inside and outside the community. The symbolic importance became eclipsed by the monetary value. Since then, traditional weaving styles and objects made from palm leaves have been increasingly present in rural and urban markets, lowering their value to the point where they no longer provide sufficient income to cover day-to-day expenses. As a result, migration has increased and the number of palm weavers has decreased. These artisans face a crossroads that will determine the future of their tradition. We are going to visit the collective called Xula Palm Craft in Santa Maria Ixcatlan to learn about who they are, where they are from, and how they have adapted to these circumstances. To get to Santa Maria Ixcatlan, we have to drive about 3 hours from Oaxaca City toward the Mixteca region in the northwest corner of the state. The many communities along the way share a history of well-rooted paternalism. Projects sponsored by government agencies and other organizations have sought to bring jobs to the region, yet have produced greater local dependency on external funding for short-term employment. Rather than working with residents to use local resources, to attain and apply new skills, and launch their own businesses, many programs offer workshops in which signing attendance sheets guarantees some form of payment while not necessarily preparing them to create or find sources of long-term income. While the region offers abundant natural resources to inspire new projects, businesses, and traditions, the Mixteca represents the region of the state suffering most from migration. About 2 hours after leaving Oaxaca City, we arrive at the town San Juan Bautista Coixtlahuaca, founded in 37 AD by the Choltoltecas, who designated the name Coixtlahuaca, or the Valley of the Snakes. The region was governed by a king who fought brutally and lost against the Mexicas under Moctezuma. Once the Spanish conquest was consummated, the architectural landscape changed. The famous church of St. John the Baptist, completed in 1576, showcases Renaissance-style order and proportions, perfect symmetry and flower-shaped windows, contrasting with the rugged and mountainous background. Our elevation continues upwards to about 2,000 meters above sea level, at which point we are already within Ixcatlan's 40,000 hectares of territory. Due to overgrazing, much of it remains covered in grass and clusters of agaves that goats have yet to develop a taste for. The rolling hills expand away from us until they meet the mountains. In the early morning, a heavy cold fog covers this area in a surreal landscape that makes you feel like you traveled to another planet. The Ixcatlan area adjoins the internationally famous Tehuacan-Cuicatlan biosphere, which crosses into the neighboring state of Puebla in the northwest, representing an arid and semi-arid zone with the richest biodiversity in all of North America. The federal government has been promising to pave the way to Ixcatlan for years. Finally, there are indications that it's happening, with contracted locals constructing their own roads under the guidance of engineers. The project could radically change the accessibility of the communities to outsiders, services, and products, while allowing residents in the region easier passage to larger urban centers. Everyone hopes for economic development. We descend the last hill towards the Ixcatlan entrance, which welcomes us in the language of Ixcateco, of which only 7 people still speak, each of whom is in their late 70s and early 80s. Specialists consider that Ixcatlan is a name that the Nahuas gave to the ancient indigenous people residing in the area. The name Ixcatlan comes from the original Ixcatel, which means cotton, and from Tlan, meaning place of. Cotton was most likely grown in the past, as it was in neighboring towns. These days, it no longer appears in the countryside, disappearing like the Ixcatlan language. Located in the northwestern region of Oaxaca called La Cañada, Santa Maria Ixcatlan has maintained a steady population of about 550 people. Historically, the population migrated and declined due to diseases, agrarian conflicts, and poor farming yields. Despite the region's abundance of water and fruit, Ixcatlan is located above the major rivers in a dry climate with little rain during the year. The low productivity of the lands leaves residents dependent on food imported from other larger towns. However, certain plants proliferate in the area, such as various agaves and palm trees, creating economic opportunities and long-standing traditions. Locally produced mezcal reflects an ancestral process, fermenting the hearts of the wild agave papalometel in leather hides from bulls and cows, in addition to other steps strictly outlined in the tradition. The Alvarez family has produced mezcal under the brand Ixcateco for many generations, reflecting the importance of preserving local identity and customs while wrestling with the economic realities and demands of the mezcal boom. These days, you can find small batches of Ixcateco mezcal in stylish bars popping up in faraway cities such as Chicago. But the Alvarez family business is more an exception to the rule. Normally, local producers face social and physical barriers to identifying proper sales channels, lacking the skill sets and knowledge to identify customer needs, to adapt their products to the potential demand outside the community. Ixcatlan is governed by usos y costumbres, or local indigenous customs law. There are obligatory tejios, or community service activities that everyone must participate in or be fined. General assemblies are regularly scheduled in which people vote for the members of local government by raising their hand. All of this reflects a strong sense of community identity and solidarity. One would think that this might enable quick and efficient organization of projects that benefit the entire community, in addition to the tejios. However, individualism, envy, gossip, fear of change, and suspicion of outsiders can quickly derail an initiative that otherwise might have improved local conditions. As a result, many Ixcatlan businesses and groups operate at the family level, with extended family members partially filling in the ranks of needed bodies. This has been both beneficial for more quickly mobilizing, but detrimental to increasing production for larger orders of local products. Despite the difficulties of traveling to the community, Ixcatlan's economy depends on outsiders. Ixcatlan is not known for casual tourism, but rather organized swarms of religious pilgrims that arrive on foot, donkey, or in car caravans from as far away as Argentina. The town swells with the 10,000 visitors during the yearly festivals to celebrate the Señor de Tres Caídas, or Lord of the Three Falls, a religious site on the hill dedicated to the 3 times Jesus fell on his way to be crucified. Religious traditions are paramount to local residents and require significant resources to maintain, even though the town is considered among the most economically impoverished in the state. Every 8 days, a family voluntarily provides all of the flowers decorating the church altar in dedication of the Señor de Tres Caídas, which also includes hosting a large meal for their family members, oftentimes contracting a live band to celebrate. Local residents' daily lives are also affected by healthcare challenges. Chronic diseases include diabetes, hypertension, and malnutrition, with many locals eating only twice a day due to food scarcities, low productivity in the fields, and few employment opportunities. One health clinic serves a community, frequently suffering from a shortage of supplies and trained staff. Yet the hospitality you find when visiting Ixcatlan shows a community that is generous and kind, inviting you into their homes and treating you to a locally produced mezcal, coffee, and meal. In addition to mezcal production, palm weaving represents a cultural tradition based on a natural resource with tremendous potential to increase family incomes. Anthropologists have called the Ixcatecos the eternal weavers for their historical talent in transforming local palm leaves into objects of symbolic and utilitarian beauty, an ancestral tradition predating the formal foundation of Santa Maria Ixcatlan. Palm weaving was formally organized in the community under the collective known as Xula, in collaboration with the founders of the Mexican nonprofit Tejiendo Alianzas. Through this joint work, Xula began to explore and experiment with contemporary palm-based craft designs, participating in experimental design workshops such as Oaxaca. It resulted in an explosion of creativity blossoming from the traditional nudo mixteco weaving style, new prototypes for new markets that the artisans hadn't considered prior. They quickly realized that at least two markets existed for their products, a high-end crafts market outside of Ixcatlan, and the more traditional segment that was culturally important to Ixcatecos. Once the Xula brand was designed and sales channels to wholesale customers were established, the group began producing orders for hotels in Mexico and artists arriving from as far away as South Korea. Sales in 2018 increased local income by more than 1,000% per participating family. Despite these enormous achievements, Xula continues to struggle as a small business, competing in a market that undervalues handmade palm products. Increasing production volume, lowering costs, and overcoming fears associated with formalizing their business are among the obstacles they face. We've arrived at the workspace for the Xula Collective, where we'll sit down with its members and learn more about their work, challenges, and dreams.
Somos un grupo de 5 mujeres y un hombre, pues nos dedicamos a tejer la palma. Nosotros ya llevamos 8 años trabajando el nudo mixteco. Antes trabajábamos el sombrero, que nos pagaban 5 pesos la pieza. Y pues la verdad eso no nos alcanzaba para nuestra economía aquí en el pueblo. Entonces poco a poco fuimos aprendiendo el nudo mixteco. Pues les enseñamos a nuestros hijos y ya van aprendiendo. Y pues la verdad nos ha ayudado mucho. Ahorita nuestras familias pues también ya saben tejer el nudo mixteco y pues se va viendo en los ingresos que lleva uno a la casa.
Cuando yo empecé a hacer cosas chiquitas. Hoy en día no hacemos solamente cosas chiquitas, hacemos cosas, tapetes grandes, tenates, tortillero, etc. Hay muchas piezas que hoy en día nosotros lo podemos hacer. Con eso tengo ingresos en el cual podemos salir adelante.
La materia prima que ocupamos nosotros se llama palma y lo vamos a recolectar en los montes del pueblo de Santa María Ixcatecos. Ocupamos una herramienta que se llama cuchillo o gancho para recolectar las palmas que están en los palmones más altos. Recolectamos alrededor de unas 300 a 400 palmas que con ayuda del burrito lo traemos al patio de nuestras casas. Del secado se lleva alrededor de 2 o 3 días para que se sequen. Y ahí vamos seleccionando la palma que ocupamos para nuestro tejido. Ya las amarillas las ocupamos para el tejido del nudo mixteco. Las morenitas y las cafecitas las ocupamos para los sombreros que nosotros aquí en el pueblo lo tejemos. Las palmas amarillas las ablandamos en la cueva. Ya que están blanditas la palma amarilla, pues lo ocupamos para hacer diversos productos. Y también hemos hecho diseños exclusivos para algunos de nuestros clientes.
A veces los mismos clientes nos ponen un reto, necesito algo de este tamaño, pero claro que sí lo podemos y lo hacemos. Cuando el cliente nos dice, ¿sabe qué? Yo lo que necesito son tapetes de color café. ¿Cómo lo hago, no? ¿Qué es lo que necesito hacer? Hicimos el intento de hacerlos con tintes, lo que es la anilina, pero no funcionó. Entonces dijimos como grupo, la misma palma tiene un proceso a que ya muere, pero viéndolo, no, pues esa palma sí me sirve y esa palma sí da ese tono que es café, que es la que nos pidieron. Entonces dijimos, no, bueno, pues esa palma es la que necesitamos. No necesito un verde, bueno, vamos y vemos que una palma se está medio muriendo, entonces esa palma es la que ocupamos, que es la verde. Ya la palma del cojollito, que nosotros le decimos, es la palma amarilla. Entonces hemos aprendido qué es lo que necesita el cliente y cómo darle una solución y no quedarnos hasta allá. Y nosotros lo que hemos batallado mucho, a lo mejor todavía, es de que sean medidas exactas. ¿Por qué? Porque todo es a mano, todo es artesanal y siempre te va a fallar 1 milímetro hasta 1 centímetro. Porque para llegar a hacer esto nos ha costado mucho trabajo, mucho esfuerzo, mucho rechazo a lo mejor de llegar a una pieza perfecta, de llegar a un diseño nuevo, Y a veces el cliente dice, pues el que te visita en esta comunidad se va a lo mejor con la pieza que está más barata, pero también los mismos artesanos de aquí de la comunidad no ven el trabajo y el esfuerzo que hay para sacar una pieza adelante. Nosotros como grupo nos ha costado mucho mantenernos, estar juntos y sacar nuevas piezas. ¿Para qué? Para que después otro lo copie y ya no tiene la misma validez, ¿no? Y entonces pues no valoran eso de que pues nosotros nos ha costado mucho tener, y ese es el problema, ¿no? De estar compitiendo con gente que realmente no valora y no ve el trabajo que hay detrás de. Aquí en la comunidad se acostumbra a hacer las tortillas, entonces desde la mañana tú te levantas haciendo tortillas, haciendo el almuerzo, haciendo la comida, todo el quehacer que viene en la casa, pero sin embargo tú también estás con esa idea que estás dentro de una empresa y que tienes que cumplir con eso. Entonces a veces uno de los grandes retos es combinar el ser ama de casa y ser una persona que tiene un proyecto, ¿no? Entonces lo tienes que sacar adelante de una u otra manera, y lo que más tratamos a mejor de enseñar son a las muchachitas. ¿Para qué? Para que mañana pasado no salgan de la comunidad y aprendan a ser algo diferente, algo nuevo, que no sea solo el sombrero, ¿no?
Los mejores clientes que tenemos son por medio de amigos. Nuestro mismo trabajo se va recomendando por amistades, por personas que visitan la comunidad. La problemática que tenemos como grupo es no manejar bien las redes sociales, ¿no? Necesitamos que alguien nos ayude a hacer esto de la logística, de planear qué fotos subir, cómo publicar. Alguien que nos ayude sobre el marketing, costos de producción, cómo llegar al cliente por medio de una publicación. Hacemos los envíos por medio de las paqueteras, pero que están en la ciudad, ¿no? De Oaxaca, Puebla. Pero para salir se nos dificulta por el camino que está feo, no hay transporte. Entonces son como 1,200 en ir y venir, nada más para ir a dejar algunas cosas a la paquetería. Estamos saliendo a tablas apenas, facturar. Todo es complicado, ¿no? Estamos viendo sobre cómo contratar más gente, pero no tenemos el suficiente trabajo o pedidos para que ellos estén trabajando con nosotros. La competencia pues también nos afecta, porque nosotros tenemos un precio fijo, nos ha costado hacer estos pequeños costos de producción, a lo mejor no bien hechos. La competencia está vendiendo trabajos de muy mala calidad, porque nosotros nos llevamos mucho tiempo en elaborar cada pieza con buena calidad. Vemos la materia prima, colores, texturas, para entregar de buena calidad al cliente, ¿no? Y eso es lo que nos está recomendando. Pero sí, la competencia es la que nos está pues acabando.
Pues me gustaría, ¿no?, que pues más personas nos conocieran y que vinieran a conocer el trabajo, que vieran cómo se hace, los tiempos que se llevan cada trabajo. Me gustaría bastante que nuestro trabajo fuera reconocido mucho más lejos, a lo mejor personas que gusten venir acá a conocernos. Aquí estamos, aquí los recibimos con los brazos abiertos, pueden ver el trabajo, pueden ver cómo es diseñado cada trabajo, que a lo mejor a ellos les llame la atención, saber cómo se procesa, ¿no?, los tiempos que se llevan, o conocer el trabajo, porque hay muchas personas que están muy lejos y que pues no desconocen de este trabajo. Pues somos ricos en todo. El material que nosotros ocupamos se da en el campo, ¿no? No necesitamos estarlo comprando. Por eso es que nosotros ese material lo cuidamos bastante.